Looked like a match made in heaven, this beautiful high society horsewoman, only daughter of a wealthy oil man. And John Hill, handsome, dashing plastic surgeon at the top of his profession.
They had a beautiful house, and John loved music. So they had musical evenings, and I heard about them, and I thought, how nice. Sounds wonderful.
She loved him, absolutely. And she was thoroughly blind to what he was up to. And he was having affairs on her. I'm a firm believer that John killed her, and he killed her for her money.
Did you think it was murder?
We just thought it was normal, that she had had some great tragedy, some kind of stomach problem.
Joan Hill died of a mysterious illness back in 1969.
But later, the headlines said otherwise.
Hill was accused in Joan's death.
And then, of course, everybody's jaw dropped.
You had a plastic surgeon in River Oaks who allegedly arranged the death of his wife, who was a beautiful woman and a horsewoman and known in society.
I started at the Post. I heard the call go out, DOA, drove over to the house on Kirby, the mansion there.
Somebody shooting at John at the house. John is there in blood. It's something I'll never forget.
The events that led to the death of John Hill are as vague in meaning as the speculation that has arisen from the evidence that was left behind. At 7:30 the evening of September 24th, a man is said to have forced his way into the Hill home.
And when they arrived, they found Hill's body lying on the floor with a gunshot wound to the head.
I can only give you my opinion who done it. Ash Robinson did it.
Ash was a very colorful Houston oil figure, was reputed to have hired a madam to arrange for the murder of John Hill in order to retaliate for what he perceived as the murder of his daughter.
And it was a big story, a big scandal, and the whole thing.
It's the death of a dream. You dream when you get married you're going to live happy ever after, and people tell you that's true. We know it isn't, but you hope for it.
She was the beautiful platinum blonde who lived in the most expensive zip code in the city. By her side was her dashing surgeon husband. Joan Robinson Hill lived in one of the grandest homes on Kirby Drive. It was the 1960s. She had it all, or so it seemed.
Oh, she was gorgeous. You know, the white hair, just very stunning woman. And everybody just loved her to death. The sweetest, nicest person I think I've ever known in my life.
Virginia Abercrombie was in her teens when she first met the stunning horsewoman, winning equestrian ribbons all over the country. In Houston, Abercrombie's relatives founded the Pin Oak Charity Horse Show, then the premier equestrian and social event. For years, Joan Robinson Hill was a headliner, and Abercrombie watched in awe.
I considered her kind of like my second mom. I looked up to her a lot for her advice.
Pin Oak would be a show that would prove even more consequential than anyone could have predicted. A young attorney by the name of Dick DeGuerin worked there as an usher.
She was very prominent there. She was a good horsewoman, a great horsewoman, really. That was her passion.
Mid-70s, probably around 75.
And attorney Kent Schaefer was barely in his teens when he went to Pin Oak with his family.
They were high society horse shows. Like when we would go, you would always wear a coat and tie. Today, nobody wears coat and ties to horse shows, if they even have horse shows. But it was a very formal affair, and that was part of Joan Hill's world. And Houston high society often, you know, that was one of their big annual events, the Pin Oak horse show. And it wasn't just one night, it was like a weekend. And they had food and drinks and music and dancing, and it was a big deal.
Joan Robinson Hill was at the center of that world. Her social rise funded by her father, the self-made oil man, Ash Robinson, who, for a time, even approved of Joan's husband, the handsome plastic surgeon, John Hill.
Ash ended up hating John Hill. Now, when they first married, of course, John Hill was a society doctor, and it was that month's wedding of the century. Looked like a match made in heaven. This beautiful high society horsewoman, the daughter, only daughter of a wealthy oil man, and John Hill, handsome plastic surgeon at the top of his profession.
Famed defense attorney Dick DeGuerin first crossed paths with the Hills through ushering at the horse show as a young man, never imagining that years later he would play a pivotal role in one of the greatest murder sagas in the Bayou City. The Joan Robinson Hill and John Hill story, with twists and turns to rival the knots in the glorious oak trees that cradle River Oaks, the fanciest neighborhood in all of Houston, and the site of the mysteries that gripped a country starting back in 1969.
At that time, they were shocked. They wanted to know everything about it. They grabbed everything they could read. I think everybody liked Joan. They were shocked about that. They couldn't get over the fact that this had happened.
Joanne King Herring was then, and still is now, the doyen of Houston society. Having dined with kings and danced with presidents, Herring, now 93, still remembers when the young Joan Robinson Hill first burst onto Houston society almost 60 years ago.
She was dating a friend of mine, and we double dated, and there she was. That's how I met her. I'd never heard of her, and I'd never seen her before, but I liked her. I liked her very much. She was extremely beautiful. She seemed very secure in herself. And when I met her family, I was shocked because her mama looked like a Grant Wood painting and her daddy like a retired wrestler.
Ash Robinson wasn't a wrestler, but the rough and tumble wealthy oil man was self-made. It was well known in Houston then that Ash funded anything Joan wanted. The father would be involved in every aspect of the daughter's life, including the selection of an appropriate husband.
I got a call one night and she said, please come to my house. I want you to meet somebody. And I went to the house, and my husband and I were the only people there. And she said, I want you to meet my fiance. And there was John Hill. That's the first place I'd never heard of John Hill. I'd never met him anywhere. No one had ever met his family. Nobody understood any of this.
Despite protests from some in their circle, John and Joan got married.
Please don't. Do not marry him. Do not marry him. He's after your money. Ash saw it, the whole family saw it. Everybody that was around her out in the show ring knew that he was just marrying her for money.
But somehow people didn't like him terribly much. I never felt drawn to him. I didn't feel lack of warmth. I just didn't feel anything. He was very good looking, movie star handsome, but he wasn't interesting to talk to. He didn't make any effort particularly to be interesting. So why spend any time with him? Yeah, once you got tired of looking at him.
For a while, life for John and Joan Robinson Hill seemed grand. She continued to win ribbons at horse shows and ran a small farm, Chatsworth, in what is now Southwest Houston. John sculpted the faces of the ladies who lunch throughout Houston. There would be parties to go to and businesses to run. Joan gave birth to a son, nicknamed Boot. The couple settled in a gorgeous mansion along Kirby Drive.
And they had a beautiful house. And John loved music, so they had musical evenings. And I heard about them, And I thought, how nice, sounds wonderful.
Those who knew John Hill would say his first and perhaps greatest love is actually music. And once ensconced in the mansion here on Kirby, he built this stunning music room. To everyone on the outside, including attorney Don Fullenwider, who lived just across the street, it certainly seemed like the couple had it all.
It was like a salon or a chamber that you would see for chamber works in Vienna, 200 to 300 years ago. And he would play the piano, the Bogendorfer, and he would play a harpsichord, and then he played a brass instrument. Very good. And he would invite people to come.
But there would soon be trouble. After all, many of Joan's friends, and especially among the society swans, never liked the handsome doctor, as much as he perhaps thought they did.
Yeah, it was very attractive. And he was nice. And he had tolerable manners. I mean, he had nice table manners, and he stood up when the ladies came in the room, and I assumed he opened the doors for a car. But that's all he was just a zero.
Joan, though, was in love and deeply devoted. Even after Dr. Hill began having an affair around 1968 with Ann Kurth, a perky brunette divorcee who lived in Houston's fancy Memorial neighborhood.
And she was thoroughly blind to what he was up to.
Through it all, Joan's love for John never wavered. And when they reconciled in early 1969, it was, to many around the couple, good news.
When I talked with her about John, that one telephone call, she obviously loves him and loved him and was sad that he had left her for a period of time. And I felt very positive when she told me that they had reconciled. I've become a divorce lawyer through all these years, and when I find that people get back together, I'm happy about it.
We would later learn in court that John Hill never stopped having an affair with Ann Kurth, even after he and Joan publicly reconciled and moved back here to the Hill Mansion. It was here, in the spring of 1969, that Joan got sick.
It was just throwing up and just body liquids all over the bed. It was just awful. The only explanation, because she was healthy as a horse, there was no explanation, no reason why she should have gotten that sick.
Back then, as it is now, the Texas Medical Center, with its world-class hospitals and premier doctors, would be the obvious place to take anyone sick, especially someone wealthy and well-connected. But John Hill took his wife to Sharpstown Hospital, a much smaller regional hospital in southwest Houston. Unlike the Texas Medical Center, it didn't have an emergency room or an ICU at the time.
Why would you put her in Sharpstown? That didn't make sense. And there was no shortage of money.
That did not sit well with me at all, because that's evidence right there that, he was carrying on with her, and while Joan was deathly ill. And so obviously he didn't care about her at all, about Joan. All he wanted was her money.
But Don Fullenwider insists to this day that John Hill took his wife to Sharpstown Hospital because he was operating out of there.
And he thought that would be where he would be close to her if she needed to go to the hospital, and she did. And then when she got there, things just got worse. We had evidence that, she was well treated, but nobody knew exactly what the bacteria was or what it was causing her to die.
On March 19th, 1969, Joan Robinson Hill succumbed to whatever infection she had and died at Sharpstown Hospital. She was just 38 years old, at the height of her social stature, and it was big news.
I felt not only sad for her, but it just seemed impossible. And at the time, nobody thought it was a murder. They just thought, oh, how sad. And then you kept asking, well, what killed her?
Did you think it was murder?
Not at the time. We just thought it was normal, that she had had some great tragedy, some kind of stomach problem, because that's what Hill said.
But
But later, the headlines said otherwise. And then, of course, everybody's jaw dropped. They couldn't believe that this had happened in their world.
Tom Kennedy, then a young reporter at the Houston Post, wrote some of those headlines.
You had a plastic surgeon in River Oaks who allegedly arranged the death of his wife, who was a beautiful woman and known in society. I mean, what? That's 3 or 4 major real, not, conjured up by a scriptwriter, but a very real situation. So that meant real life drama.
As attorney Dick DeGuerin remembers, the weeks and months after Joan Robinson Hill's death were shrouded in bizarre circumstances.
Because she died in the hospital, it was not really an autopsy at all. She was exhumed, and when she was exhumed, it was for Ash Robinson to bring in a forensic pathologist to second guess whatever had happened. And that was very strange. When he got to examining the body, he found that the brain had been removed. It was gone. And as I recall, the doctor from the hospital that had done the hospital autopsy said, "Oh yes, I have it. It's in my car." And he went out and got the brain out of his car and brought it in.
I requested an autopsy immediately afterwards, and I did not designate when the autopsy was to be performed, or who would perform it, or attempt in any way to influence its performance, or to limit it in any way. The autopsy, so far as I was concerned, could have been performed under any circumstances that at the time would have been appropriate. And both the county and all other interested parties had complete and free latitude to have conducted this examination in any way that they would have wanted to do.
Ash Robinson never gave up. Joan's body was exhumed. There were additional autopsies. It took 3 grand juries and more than 2 years. But John Hill would eventually get indicted for the murder of his wife, Joan Robinson Hill. The murder by omission charge didn't accuse John Hill of directly killing Joan, rather that he withheld proper care for her.
I didn't think that they had much of a case against John Hill. I thought it was all Ash Robinson's influence that got John Hill indicted. I still think that.
If you want to get it in for somebody, you're going to find every little ounce of evidence and talk and hearsay to make them look bad. And that's what he did. He had influence in the court. He had unbelievable influence with the grand jury.
By the time the indictment occurred in the spring of 1970, John Hill had already married Ann Kurth, his mistress. It didn't last long, though. They would be divorced before the trial began. Kurth would play a crucial role in court, and because Houston is still a town where everyone knew each other, Hill's neighbor, the then young attorney Don Fullenwider, would be one of the lawyers hired to defend him on the murder by omission charge. You believe from the beginning that John Hill was not responsible for Joan Hill's death?
I did, yes. I mean, all the facts, it was based on all the facts that, of the doctors that had seen her, the doctors who were at the when they exhumed her body, and there were a mixture of findings, but nothing was really specific. Nobody really put their finger on what the real cause was. And the analysis of some of that led to his indictment, I didn't think added up at all from a medical point of view.
The murder trial of John Hill began in February of 1971 and was the talk of the town. Everyone had an opinion, especially Virginia Abercrombie.
We were just best friends, and it really upsets me to this day that she's gone and why she's gone, what happened to her. And I'm a firm believer that John killed her, and he killed her for her money. It's plain and simple.
Proving the case would be no easy task. In court, Prosecutors allege that John Hill slowly poisoned his wife by feeding her, over a course of weeks, chocolate eclairs laced with deadly bacteria. Moreover, the allegation was that he grew the bacteria in petri dishes hidden in his then-mistress Ann Kurth's home. Renowned defense attorney Kent Schaefer, who was then a 21-year-old private investigator for John Hill's defense team, never bought into the theory.
There was a big question mark as to how she, ended up getting sick to the point where she died. But the whole bacteria in the petri dish that went into the eclairs, that just seems so far-fetched. I mean, I love eclairs as much as anybody, but if somebody brings me an eclair every day and stands there and says, I want to see you finish that, after about the second day, I'd be like, go away,
Tom Kennedy, who covered the trial every day, also thought it was a stretch, especially after the Hills' young son, Robert Boot Hill, testified in court. The reporter didn't think the doctor was quite malicious enough to do it.
John he's not a calculating individual. And don't you think you got to be really calculating to inject this eclair? And of course, I took that piece of the jigsaw and put it with what Robert said. And Robert said, Dad brought home eclairs all the time, and I would divide them with my mother. In other words, he was eating the same eclairs at the same time period. Okay, so if you're John Hill, how are you going to make sure that your wife gets the one that's infected?
The city of Houston was transfixed on every twist and turn in the courtroom. Kennedy remembers the lucky citizens who snagged seats in the courtroom and their reaction when they disapproved of his coverage.
There were these groupies, and they were all horsewomen. They were like about 22 years old, and they were daddy's girls, and they ribbed me every day. I could walk outside, well, you did it again, Mr. Kennedy, in the Post. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you're just making Mr. Robinson look bad.
We thought there would be an acquittal because we had witnesses that said that, certainly he had not done anything from a medical point of view that would be a cause of death. I mean, it was not. And we had, plenty of evidence that there was no connection with his treatment of her or that would have ended up in her death.
The case, though, never got to a jury. An unexpected utterance from Ann Kurth in court about how John Hill tried to kill her, too, forced the judge to declare a mistrial.
I was really upset during the whole trial because they were trying to portray him as he was a wonderful doctor, and of course he could never have done anything like that.
So when they declared a mistrial, did you think he got away with it?
Oh, absolutely. He definitely got away with it. I firmly believe that. He definitely got away with it. He got away with murder, plain and simple. Absolutely.
John Hill's own attorneys also didn't want a mistrial because they believed the jury was on their side, and that also Ash would not give up.
So once that mistrial was declared, it didn't, we were upset that it didn't get over with, and John had to live with it, and he did.
John Hill would not be off the hook. A retrial was scheduled for next fall. But how would Ash Robinson, the aggrieved father of Joan Robinson Hill, feel about the delay? In Tom Kennedy's view, Ash's opinion didn't really matter.
I just don't think it adds up that this doctor, who was, in my mind, from what I know about him, a bit scatterbrained a little bit when it came to things that weren't his specialty. His specialty was plastic surgery and playing the piano and music.
And John Hill continued to make music and do so with a new love. Before his retrial on murder charges, Hill would marry for a third time to Connie. They shared a love for music, They held salons and performances in their music room, and for a while, life in Houston society seemed to take a break from the Hill family saga. Also during that time, a young reporter named Gary Taylor.
In December of 1971, I started at the Post, and my job was to go over to the police station every night from 6 to 2 o'clock and wait for something to happen, listen to the police radios, run out to murder scenes, that kind of thing.
On September 24th, 1972, the police radios crackled alive.
I came in that night, and I distinctly remember I heard the call go out, DOA at 1561 Kirby, and I immediately called my city desk editor, the night editor, a guy named Lou Wortham, who was kind of a crusty old fellow, you know, and I said, hey, we got a DOA in the 1500 block of Kirby, and he said, that's a pretty fast address. Taylor, you better get your ass over there right now.
As Gary Taylor drove as fast as he could toward the mansion on Kirby, Don Fullenwider, the lawyer and neighbor, was already there.
It's something I'll never forget. And as we talk about it now, the vision comes up of him laying there. I can see it like it was yesterday.
Fullenwider would be one of the first people to see John Hill shot dead in his own home.
As we're talking, I can only see his body laying there in the blood and with his mouth and nose taped. My vision is just looking at his face and seeing the blood and saying, obviously, he's dead. You know, I didn't know what to do.
John Hill's son, Boot, and his grandmother were staying at the mansion on Kirby while the doctor and his new wife, Connie, were away at a medical conference. As a taxi dropped them off that night, Hill would be confronted at his front door by a gunman who shot him multiple times. Connie Hill managed to get away, and Fullenwider was one of the first people she called.
I was taking a nap when I get this call, and my wife said, Connie's on the phone, somebody's shooting at John at the house. So I go bursting out of my house and run over there. I don't know why I was doing that. I didn't have a gun. The last time I was here was when I found John's body. And I get there, and the door is slightly ajar, and I push it open. John's body was right here. And his son was standing over his father, who's laying on the floor and has a tape across his nose and mouth. And then further in the back was John's mother, who had been babysitting with Boot. I wouldn't be surprised that that the killer did this before, because he seemed to know what he was doing. My focus was on the body and on the son, because he was hopping. He was trying, because he could not walk. And he was trying to, you know, with his legs being tied, he was hopping to try to get to his dad, which I knew was futile, and he didn't want me to carry him out. I mean, he wanted to help his father, but he's tied up. I think his hands were behind him, and his legs were tied. So I grabbed Boot and picked him up and carried him out, because I didn't, you know, John is there in blood. I wanted to get him away from the scene of his father in that position. Of course, I was very upset, and at the time, the calls that Connie had made had caused the police to come. You could start hearing the sirens and stuff, and I came out.
I could tell it was a different kind of scene than normal. Back then, reporters used to come up and walk around, stomp around the murder scenes. We'd walk around the dead bodies, and I figured I would just pull up, get up, and go in the house. Anyway, one of them came out and said, no, you're not coming in tonight. So I knew immediately this was something different. This was going to be a big deal.
The brazen murder of Dr. John Hill led the news that night and the papers the next day. It was sensational.
The events that led to the death of John Hill are as vague and meaning as the speculation that has arisen from the evidence that was left behind. At 7:30 the evening of September 24th, a man is said to have forced his way into the Hill home.
And when they arrived, they found Hill's body lying on the floor with a gunshot wound to the head.
Among the rich and in the wealthier neighborhoods, generally speaking, people don't act like that. They settle their differences otherwise. They hire lawyers to sue their neighbor. They call the police on their neighbor. You rarely see people resorting to violence in River Oaks or Tanglewood or any of the neighborhoods with the multi-million-dollar homes.
So when he was killed, what did you say?
Good. Good riddance. Later. I was thrilled. Should have been done sooner.
And before John Hill was even buried, speculation began on who had him killed.
The Houston Police Department theorizes his shooting death was initially a robbery attempt that ended fatally. But Hill's mother, Mrs. Myra Hill, disagrees.
Was it your impression that this man came here to murder your son?
I think that was entirely, totally the purpose of his coming.
Even though he did say it was a robbery?
Oh yes, I think the robbery, what he said about the robbery had nothing to do with it except to let us know that he meant business.
Ash was a very colorful Houston oil figure, lived on Kirby, and was reputed to have hired a madam to arrange for the murder of John Hill in order to retaliate for what he perceived as the murder of his daughter.
I can only give you my opinion who done it. Ash Robinson did it. He did the whole thing. I mean, the whole scenario traces to Ash Robinson. And I believe if you talk to Robert Hill today, he would tell you the same thing.
It was a big story, a big scandal, and the whole thing. And of course, John Hill's second marriage was kind of a scandal too. It didn't last very long, but that's what caused his first divorce.
Speculation is easy. Proof? Far more difficult.
Nowadays, murder cases aren't nearly as interesting. Somebody shoots somebody over a dice game behind a building, so what? Back then, there was a whole different world around murders, and this had everything you could possibly look for.
The murder weapon was actually found in the bushes of River Oaks, which was then traced to a doctor in East Texas. And then an even more bizarre twist.
So they go to the doctor. This is your gun, and this is the gun that killed John Hill. What do you have to say about it? He said, that gun was stolen from me, and I reported it stolen. And I think the person that stole it from me was this whore from Dallas, and he identified her. She's Marcia McKittrick.
From Houston, detectives eventually narrowed in on a theory involving three people. The prostitute Marcia McKittrick paid her erstwhile boyfriend Bobby Vandiver to shoot and kill John Hill, and that she got the money from an older woman by the name of Lilla Paulus. Dick DeGuerin would end up representing Lilla.
Bobby Vandiver was the guy that killed John Hill. Really no question about that. There was lots of evidence about that. And Bobby Vandiver was a bad guy. His girlfriend was Marcia McKittrick. That was the theory of the prosecution.
And hanging over the case of these three defendants was the one man never charged, Ash Robinson.
The only reason Ash was not indicted on murder for hire was that the corroborative evidence, Bobby Wayne Vandiver, got in a shootout with police in Longview, and he was, not available as a witness.
He was dead.
That's right.
There was a lot of dead people.
Yep, and they can't testify.
Bobby Vandiver died in a Longview, Texas pool hall shootout. His girlfriend, Marcia McKittrick, made a deal with prosecutors and got 10 years. So the only person who actually went to trial was purported Madam Lilla Paulus.
The way that indictments can be worded is she could be charged with the murder even though she was not present. And that's what they did. They charged her with the murder as a party, as an accomplice, is what the law used to call it.
With Bobby Vandiver dead and Marcia McKittrick testifying against her, the trial was long and difficult. DeGuerin even put Lilla Paulus on the stand in her own defense.
And of course, Lilla testified and denied that she had anything to do with it. She acknowledged that Marcia McKittrick had stayed with her from time to time. She acknowledged that she had met Bobby Vandiver, who was Marcia's boyfriend. but she denied it having anything to do with Ash Robinson setting up the murder.
Much to DeGuerin's chagrin, Paulus was found guilty in 1975, sentenced to 35 years behind bars. Paulus would eventually die in prison in 1986, but she never pointed a finger at Ash Robinson, even though, as Gary Taylor remembers, everyone believed she knew more than she let on.
When you look at everything that happened, there had to have been some money involved. The idea that there would be this hit in River Oaks would have cost some money, and that Lila Paulus went to her grave not snitching on anybody.
After all, there was no doubt that Paulus and Ash Robinson knew each other. Even her own attorney agreed on that point.
One of the things that Lila, that connected Lila to Ash is that she had gone and sat in Ash's box at the Pin Oak charity, not when he was there, but she just used that box.
Ash he knew the trick that a lot of people use today. If you keep repeating it over and over and over, people are going to pick up and they're going to believe it. And you know the old saying, when the legend becomes fact, you print the legend.
Do you think Ash Robinson was the smartest person in all of this?
I think Ash comes across as, well, I'm just a lucky old oil man, and I don't know if he really needed a cane or not, but he brought a cane to court, and under that, I'm just a man from the oil fields, you know. I mean, I never believed that, and I was reviewing some of my stories and notes, and he got into the Tulane Dental School, a dumb old oil man from the country. You can't be that and get in the Tulane Dental School, but he decided he didn't like it, so he became an oil man.
What about Mr. Robertson? What is your feelings towards him at this time?
I believe with all my heart that he was the man responsible for the death of my husband, and I will always believe that.
And so some 50 years later, there is still disagreement on how involved Ash Robinson was in the indictments and the trials. What is not in dispute, though, is that prosecutors at the time wanted to indict Ash Robinson in the murder of John Hill. They could just never get there.
At the time, the Harris County District Attorney's Office was actually trying to indict Ash Robinson. And they had a couple prosecutors and two of their investigators who were working pretty much full time because they believed Ash Robinson had arranged for this murder.
I guess he had enough connections to where he could, I don't want to coin the phrase, get away with it, but he was able to use something, contacts or whatever, to get, escape blame.
With Joan Robinson Hill dead, John Hill dead, Bobby Vandiver, the shooter, dead, and the two women, Marsha McKittrick and Lila Paulus, in prison, the criminal cases finally came to a close, but not the legal maneuvering.
Nothing ever happened to Ash except he was sued by John's widow, and there was a civil suit. And basically it was the same scenario over again.
John Hill's surviving son, Boot, and his third wife, Connie, would file a civil lawsuit against Ash for wrongful death. They would lose that case. But as Fullenwider saw it, Ash Robinson did not come out ahead.
You lost the civil suit.
Yes.
Ash was never held responsible for any of this.
That's right.
Do you feel like he got away with?
No, because I don't believe it works that way. I'm sure he was miserable with the loss of his daughter from the time that happened till he died. So he suffered a lot, and I can identify with that, of losing a child. And when that happens, you look for some reason, and if you find or believe you found that reason, you spend your life, and particularly a guy like Ash Robinson, who was, you know, strong-willed, and he would not let rest until he tried to prove what he believed to be true. So he didn't get away with anything.
What are you going to do with the house now that you own half of it?
Well, I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to try to keep them from disposing of it as they want to do, and keep it and hold it for Boots so that he loves the home, so that when he marries and gets of age, well, he'll have that house.
Ash Robinson says that while he's won this lawsuit and the ownership of half this house, he still doesn't really have what he wants, and that is a reconciliation with his grandson, Robert. This is Elma Barrera, Eyewitness News.
I don't think they'll ever really solve that case, whether Ash Robinson did it or not. It's solved in a lot of people's mind, I know.
Robert, how do you feel now about your grandfather? You still have animosity against him?
I wouldn't say animosity. I just believe that there was evidence to prove that he was involved in a conspiracy to kill my father.
What about your grandmother?
My grandmother, I believe that she had nothing to do with it at all, and I hold nothing against her.
Do you think this thing is going to affect your life in years to come?
Oh, I believe it will. I don't know how, but...
Do you think you're going to follow your father's footsteps as a plastic surgeon or even a doctor?
It's a very good possibility. I've thought about it quite a bit.
Ash Robinson and his wife would eventually move to Florida. Some years later, Connie Hill sold this house, remarried, and moved to Colorado. Boot Hill is now an attorney in Maryland. And just about everyone else involved in one of Houston's greatest murder mysteries is long gone. But the memories, they remain.
I still miss her to this day. I mean, she just, still a big place in my heart for her.
I think it shows how fascinated the public can be with the wealth and the flaws in the wealthy. When they hear the stories of the rich people killing each other, rich people cheating on each other, and all the money that's involved.
More than half a century has passed since Joan Robinson Hill won the ribbons at the horse shows and John Hill's musical talents wafted through the pristine estates in River Oaks. The oak trees are still here, and so are some of the mansions where the Hills held court during happier times. But in every other way, there was no fairy tale ending.
It's the death of a dream. You dream when you get married you're going to live happy ever after, and people tell you that's true. We know it isn't. But you hope for it.
Just a lingering air of mystery and uncertainty.
If Ash had just gone over and shot John Hill at his front door, it would be interesting, but it wouldn't be much of a story. But instead, you know, he goes through a world involving madams, prostitutes, hitmen, and so it takes on a whole new life because that underbelly of society all of a sudden is mixing with the highest ends of society. Murders in River Oaks, murder on, you know, Kirby Drive, a doctor being shot at his front door, a woman poisoned with eclairs. I mean, it's got all sorts of exciting elements mixed into it.
And today in the house where love, death, murder, and mystery intertwined, the memory of Joan Robinson Hill in the height of her life as the brilliant horsewoman is highlighted in every room. And in the music room John Hill built, there is still music being made, even if the question of how each of them died can never fully be answered.